TikTok live, so I'm learning. Welcome to another episode of the Phase Knowledge Podcast. If you are a business owner, a leader, or someone who's getting into business, this episode is just for you. And we're going to talk about why get into business or why start your business. And I want to really inform you that this is going to be a great episode, great conversation, because one thing that I've learned by being on my entrepreneurship journey is that everything is going to change. Not only as everything is changing, you are the one that's evolving. And so if you're here for the first time, make sure you hit that like, hit that follow, and most importantly, understand that when you start your journey of starting your business, you are going to learn a lot. So the question at hand is, why start your business? And I give you a prime example. The reason why you should start your business is something that's going to challenge you. When I started my business, when I first got into business, started learning different things about business, marketing, things of that nature, I started when I was in the Marine Corps. And when I started in the Marine Corps, I started with the car wash. It was called A Journey of the Car Wash. Ooh, I remember that one. It's called The Journey of a Car Wash. And throughout that time, when I was learning how to wash the cars, I was learning how to get people to let me wash their cars. I was getting the material, I was getting the vacuum, I was getting the soap, I was getting the rags, I was getting all these different things. And when I started to understand, well, this is a form of business, how can I start making money from it? How can I start being profitable from it? Now, at the time, I didn't know it was called that terminology. Nonetheless, as I continue to go along the journey and discover what the process is going to teach me, I started to understand, wait, I'm becoming someone different. This information that I have is helping me grow. It's helping me learn. It's helping me be more established. You see, I'm gonna share my screen right quick. For those of you that's joining live on TikTok, make sure you hit that follow button. For those of you that's joining live on everywhere else, make sure you hit that follow button, because one thing that stops a lot of people from succeeding is the lack of information. So I didn't have as much information that I had now when I started, but I knew like eventually I would get the information. And so when the journey, all right, there we go. Hold on. JOURNEY, journey of a car wash. One of these days I have to find the business card for it, because I know I got it, but I just got to find it. Nonetheless, when I really started to understand, well, the journey of a car wash, what is the journey of the car wash? Well, the journey is that there's a car here. You got a car. Boom, boom. Yep, that's a car. Let's call it a Lamborghini. All right, you got another one. Then you got another one. You got the wheels. Car. So the journey of a car wash is that 1 second it could be, let's say this is clean. Let's say this is dirty. And by dirty, I'm talking about dusty, it has a lot of pollen on it, and so on and so forth. And so when I started to understand, well, when people ask me about the journey, what is the journey of a car wash? The journey of a car wash is that it could be clean one day, and then the following day it could be dirty. And then the following day right after that, it could be clean again. Then the following day right after that, it could be dirty. Why? Because it's the journey of a car wash. And when I started to really put it together and really start understanding, like, wait, this is a form of business. This is business that I'm doing, but I didn't know it was called business. I just thought it was called doing something on the side. And, excuse me, this is called side hustle. It's called side hustle. In other words, when I was in the service serving, I was looking to see how can I generate more money, or how can I make more money just by doing something differently. Even though I'm in the military, even though I have a contract with the service, how can I do something different on my free time? And so I start to put myself out there. I start to discover what I was doing, and I got better over time. Now, there was one time when I had watched this guy. He was a sergeant, and I had watched his Chrysler 300. It was a nice Chrysler 300. And at that time, I didn't recognize that you can't use the same cloth that you wash the interior with to wash his screen. And so one day I ended up washing his screen after I got done washing the car, and the screen had a whole bunch of streak marks on it. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, I have no idea how to get that off. I have no idea how to fix this. But what I recognize is that I was willing to take that risk. Why entrepreneurship? Why start your business? You have to be willing to take that risk for yourself, to understand that you have to be willing to learn something new. You have to be willing to discover what's new to you. You see, one thing that stops a lot of people is the lack of information, yet the lack of information don't come from you not taking the risk. Welcome for y'all, those of you who are joining. Welcome. We are talking about why start your business, and one thing that I recognize is that it's really a journey that you go through. And when I started to go through the journey and learn more about everything that I was doing started to make sense, not overnight, but over time. So the journey of the car wash was really me understanding, well, since I'm in the Barracks, at the time it was called the Bears, and the Bears is like an apartment complex, or, apartment complex for the military. So as I'm in the Barracks or the apartments, we was cleaning one day, and as we was cleaning, I happened to see a lot of cars out here. A majority of them was dirty. Some of them was clean. By some, I'm saying like a very small percentage. And I was like, wait, hold on. If I want to try something differently, if I want to create some extra money on the side, what can I do? So I went to Walmart. And when I went to Walmart, I bought a vacuum. The vacuum was like, oh, that vacuum was crazy. Hold on. That vacuum was different. Hold on. That vacuum was different. I wish I still had that vacuum to this day, because that was a great vacuum. Hold on. So the vacuum, let's say this the vacuum right here. Car vacuum. Oh, come on. Hold on. It ain't showing now. Hold on. All right, there we go. Car vacuum. All right, welcome for those of you who are joining. So you have the car vacuum, and with this car vacuum, you have something to clean the car out, to get the dust out, to clean the floor and things of that nature. I went to Walmart, and I think this mug was like, how much was it? It was, let's say it was around $40 to $80, because I don't remember the exact price. Let's say it was around $40 to $80. So I paid this price one time, one payment, and I was able to make more money from the one payment that I made. And I didn't know it was called risk during that time. I'm just thinking, well, I just want to make money on the side. I want to make money on the side. How can I make money on the side? And so when I was really discovering what the money consisted of, or what the work consisted of, I started to understand, well, if I purchase this thing once, maybe I can use this for a long time. Maybe this one investment that I have, or this one thing that I spent money on, can help me make money, which it absolutely did. So then I'm like, hold on, I just can't stop at the vacuum, because a car needs to be cleaned on the outside, it needs to be cleaned on the inside, and it actually needs to be presentable. So when I proceeded to go and clean the cars, I'm like, okay, so what else does a car wash need? A car wash also need what is called rags. It need rags, and then it needs soap, and then it need water, and then it needs what is it called, drying cloth. In other words, there's steps to the process. There's things that you have to have in order for you to really get into business. Why start your business? You start your business because you start to see things that's not in front of you. You start to ask questions about, okay, what's in front of me and what problem can I potentially solve? When I started to understand I was solving a problem, the problem that I was solving is that a lot of people cars wasn't washed. And then if you actually think about it, where we was at on base is literally a 20-minute drive to go off of base, which is like leaving the apartment complex and leaving the area, or leaving the city. Is more so of, as you are leaving this city, you have to get in your car, drive 20 minutes out to get a car wash, and come back 20 minutes to come back to your apartment complex or barracks. And when I started to recognize that I'm solving the problem that I was solving was convenience. But I didn't know it was called convenience. I'm like, man, I'm here. It'd be easier to work with me. Why not just work with me if you already have a car? Like, I'm trying to remove the work that people have to do. And so when I started to recognize that I'm helping people solve a problem, the problem that I was solving for myself is that, one, on the weekend, I had no free time because I was washing cars. Two, just because I was washing cars, I was able to create a side hustle. And with this side hustle, I started to understand, well, there's something here. There's something that's happening. There's something that's changing about me. As years goes on, as months goes on, as days goes on, I started to recognize that, hold on, I'm learning about business. I'm learning about business. You see, why start your business? Because you learn things that you're not familiar with. You learn things that that you don't understand. You learn things that's not right in front of you, but you have to go out and seek the information. You see, when I went to go seek the information that I was seeking, it helped me learn more about business. And when I started to understand, appreciate y'all for joining in. I'm doing something new. I'm on TikTok Live. I'm on what other lives I'm on? I'm on X Live, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and Twitch. But see, when I started to understand that I wanted to do something on the side, the thing that took up on a lot of free time was me trying to figure it out. Why start your business? Because you are trying to figure it out. I started to understand I'm figuring out business. I'm figuring out the problem. I'm figuring out the way to communicate. I'm figuring out all these different things. But here's the news flash. As I'm figuring it out, I'm understanding more about the problem that I can solve. I give you another prime example. What you talking about? We're talking about why start your business. Because when you understand that you are starting your business for a reason, starting your business will make a difference in your world, in your life, that will help you really help others solve a problem. So when I really positioned myself differently, it was like, okay, well, why is that important? Why does that matter? It matters because when I started my first 90-day challenge to grow a podcast business, I'm on my 5th attempt, by the way. When I started to grow a business, when I started the 90-day challenge to grow a business within 90 days, I got a lot of people saying, well, maybe you should focus on a problem. What problem are you solving? When you get into business, you have to identify the problem. And I'm like, what problem is there to solve? Like, I don't even know what business I'm trying to do. I don't know what problem I'm trying to solve. I don't even know the issue at hand that I don't understand. And so as I proceeded to go on and I started to learn and ask questions and be around people who's doing business, I started to understand these people are solving a particular problem. These people who have been in business for a longer amount of time than me, they understand something that I don't. And the thing that they understand is about business. Why start your business? Because I believe it is the best personal development that you could ever experience, because you start to see the unknown. You start to get educated from the unknown. So with the unknown, when you are learning about the unknown equals the problem. The unknown equals the problem. So fast forward to today, half a decade later, as I really start to understand that there's more to just having a thing to sell, a service to provide, and or goal to make, is that you have to really understand the unknown. So I give you a prime example. So I'm on my 5th attempt to grow a podcast business. And in fact, it's actually my 5th attempt to grow a media business. And so recently I'm like, okay, the problem that I'm solving is that I'm helping leaders launch their podcast with confidence. A lot of people want to launch their podcast, but they have no idea how to go about doing it. So I'm like, all right, cool. So how can I go about helping them launch their podcast with confidence? So as I proceeded to go about and positioning how to help people launch their podcast with confidence, I started to recognize a problem. I started to notice that people have the equipment, they have the studio, they have the places, but a lot of times it's the recording that stops a lot of people from doing it. So it's not the fact that people don't want to launch their podcast. It's actually when you launch your podcast, how can you stay consistent with your podcast? So this problem is bigger than something that I can solve, because now I'm trying to figure out a new business model, a new way to communicate with other people. In addition to that, it taught me that I need to pivot. When I pivot on the problem that I'm trying to solve, as I'm pivoting, I'm learning. As I'm pivoting, I'm growing. As I'm pivoting, I'm establishing a better understanding. And so instead of me helping leaders launch their podcast with confidence, recently, in fact, a couple of days ago, we helped leaders gain more exposure, share their story, and attract the right customers through podcasting. And when I started to recognize that a lot of businesses have the product, a lot of businesses have the services, but they just don't have the exposure to help them get more customers, to help them get more attention, to help them have more exposure. Then I started to recognize, I was like, oh, that's different. That's different. Why start your business? You start your business because the unknown eventually starts to become the known. The known is understanding what you are doing. The known is understanding that as you are helping people, as you are helping a problem, solving a problem, the problem that you're solving is something that you solve for yourself. So I'm like, okay, instead of me trying to go about teaching people another skill, which is difficult itself, because now you got to overcome your own self barriers or self-doubt or anything of that nature. It's more so just understanding that as you go into business, when you start your business, there's going to be a lot of changes and pivots that you have to do. And yet when you find the right pivot, and mind you, you would never know which pivot is the right pivot, but you have to change and adjust to time. It's really understanding that as you are pivoting, you're learning. And so one time I was speaking to my mentor. No, not even my mentor. It was a couple of people that was in business, that's been doing business a lot longer than me. And as they was doing business a lot longer than me, I'm asking questions. Like I asked a lot of different questions, and I started to recognize something. The people who have been in business for 20, 30, 40 years, they still have to pivot. They still have to change and update their business model, their business plan, and whatever the case is. But it's really that once you get into business, you don't stop doing business, because eventually things will change. You will have to update. You will have to improve. So why start your business? Because when you start your business, you are starting with yourself. When you start your business, you are learning about yourself. When you start your business, you start to see something differently. The different that you are seeing is, rather than seeing the unknown, you start to see the known, where people are talking about the problem that you could potentially solve. You're never going to know the right problem to solve until you take that risk. And as you are taking that risk, you have to understand that this risk will pay out over time. I've been in business, or I've been trying to figure out business for the last half a decade. And it's just now starting to make sense, because I continue to do it. I continue to ask. I continue to go to different places and understand what the business that I'm in. I watch videos. I go to communities. I go to mass. I get the education. I'm in school for it. It's really educating yourself to understand that the risk that you're taking, it's the risk that's preparing you for your business to have. For you to have your business. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy because there's a lot of work that goes into starting your business. And so when I started to understand that a lot of people have goals, dreams, and aspirations to do certain things, but it's taking that risk, it's taking that leap that makes a difference. How can you go from not having a business to starting a business with confidence, to understand that you are doing something for yourself? So I'm not going to sit here and say that I know everything, or I know a lot of different stuff. No. I know enough to get me from point A to point B. And for the media business that I'm growing, that I'm building from the ground up, there's a process that I'm going through, and I want to express like the goal behind starting your starting your business is really position yourself differently. Like for instance, I was just about to say something about podcasts. That yes, I am Terrell Humphrey, the host of the Phase Knowledge Podcast, and at first it was around podcasting. It was around podcasting because it's a business I'm in, or the media business that I'm in. And one day when I met this young man, he was doing like the power washer. They was doing power washer. And I told him that we have a podcast where we help leaders launch their podcast with confidence, and it's called the Phase Knowledge Podcast. And he was like, all right, cool. So we're going to listen to it. We're going to listen to it. They end up listening to it, right? And here's the thing that I wasn't expecting. He said, at first, it did not resonate with me. But then as I continued to learn or continue to listen to the episode, it started to resonate with me because I was talking about podcast episodes, you get better from the podcast episodes. But he was like, well, how does that apply to me? And I was like, oh, that's it. That's it. What is it? That is it. When I started to recognize that my language, hold on. Okay, there we go. My language didn't focus around business. I had to change it. Language didn't focus around business. I had to change. And I had to change because I wasn't connecting with the people that I needed to connect with. Podcasting is such a niche industry, which is absolutely fine, which is absolutely amazing. But a lot of businesses struggle with exposure, and I will be able to connect with small businesses in a bigger pool while really presenting something that a lot of people don't offer. And so when I started to learn and understand that, I started to see something differently. I started to understand, well, it's the positioning that matters. When I started the journey of a car wash back when I was serving in the Marine Corps, I was serving because I saw something. I wanted to do this business because I thought I could figure this problem out. If I would have stuck to it, I probably would. The journey of a car wash would probably been a business. Nonetheless, before you become a business, you have to understand to take risk. So I want to go more in depth with understanding the importance of taking risk. So hold on, let me make sure. Hold on. All right, so I had to change. So language didn't focus around business, so I had to change. So first thing first, you have to be willing to take risk. You have to be willing to take risk. Take risk. And I did a podcast with my buddy back in Little Rock, Arkansas. He's an actor. Shout out to Dre. And we did a podcast together, and I was learning more about his story, learning more about his journey. And what I started to recognize is that, one, just because you're doing one thing doesn't mean you can't do another. But what it means is that you have to do it strategically. And so I was telling him, I was like, man, doing research on you, bro, was difficult. And I was like, man, you don't have a lot of information about you. And I'm like, man, I'm trying to like put it together. Not to say that I can't, but I like to do research on the people that I'm trying to interview. And what I recognize is that even though you're doing one thing, you have to be okay with doing another, which is marketing yourself. Marketing yourself is using the social media platforms to put yourself out there. It's getting out in front of people and communicating with them. It's going online and social media, emails, and communicating with people. Marketing, I took a class in marketing for business management, and communication is a form of marketing. Whenever you speak to someone, you are marketing yourself. So when you take risks, you have to be willing to speak to people. When you take risks, you have to be willing to put yourself out there. When you take risk, you have to be willing to market yourself. To take risk, you are marketing. And marketing is to bring attention to people. In fact, let me read the actual definition of marketing. Oh, hold on. The actual definition of marketing. So the actual definition of marketing is Um, it is. Oh, I needed that one. Hold on. All right, there we go. All right, so the definition of marketing is marketing definition. It says the activity or business of promoting and selling products or service, including market research and advertisements. Ray, what it do, man? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Marketing is the activity or business of promoting and selling products or service, including market research and advertising. Okay, why did I bring that up? I brought that up because when you take risk, you have to be okay with putting yourself out there. As you are putting yourself out there, you start to learn more about what you are doing. As you learn what you are doing, you have to be okay with pivoting. You have to be okay with growing. You have to be okay with evolving. As you evolve, what is that? Hold on. What is that? As you evolve, you start to understand that the people that you are connecting with are the people that connect with you. Hold on. Let me go more in depth with it. Okay. So when you market yourself, this right here is a form of communication. In other words, as you communicate, hold on, you are marketing yourself. You are marketing. Why are you marketing? You're marketing. You're marketing because you have to bring attention to your business or product or service. When people start to learn more about what you offer, people start to remember what you offer because you're constantly telling them. I did a couple podcasts a couple days ago. And when I did the podcast, so many different things was happening. It was the conversation I was having. It was the thought process that was coming. It was the flow of the conversation that made the conversation even better to be a part of. And I just remember, I got to do the trailer for, nonetheless, I got to do a trailer for the podcast. I forgot to do that. So we're going to do that today. The gifts help your algorithm and they pay you. Oh man, I appreciate that. I got like 10% on this phone. This is my first time going live on here. So when I started to understand, I was like, wait, hold on. I'm doing something wrong. I'm trying to remember everything. I'm trying to remember everything without writing everything down. What does that have to do with marketing? Marketing has to do with you saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over again until someone actually remember, hey, you're the podcast guy. And when I started to recognize that I was saying the same message over and over and over again, and when I go to different networking events, when I go to different places, when I go to different events, and I introduce myself, people remember. Like they literally come back like the next time I go, and literally come back and be like, hey man, ain't you the podcast guy? Marketing is a form of communication because people have to remember what you do, how you do it, and why you're doing it. I started to recognize, I was like, oh, okay, I think I'm in business. I think I'm doing the right business. You see, taking risks is a form of marketing because you have to communicate your marketing. Rather, you have to communicate your product. Rather, you have to communicate your service in a way where people will understand it. Hold on. When people understand your communication, people start to remember you're the podcast guy. Well, me. Or whatever you like to do, you're the blank guy, you're the blank woman, you're something. When you get remembered in people's minds, people start to remember you in their minds because you're constantly saying the same exact thing. When you take risks, you're taking risks for people to remember who you are. Hold on. It's not the fact that people don't know who you are. See, marketing is a form of communication because you're communicating with people. And as you are communicating with people, people start to say, I remember you. When he preaching, I appreciate it. When people start to say, I remember you, why do they remember you? It started to really understand, well, taking risks is putting yourself out there when you don't know where anything's going to come from. For instance, me going live on multiple different platforms, it is really nerve-wracking because now I got to look on this side, I got to look at this screen, and then when I put my other phone up and go live on another platform, I'm going to have to look at everything right now. But see, here's the difference with growth. Here's the difference with taking that risk. Here's the difference with learning about your business. You start to become your business. They say, be redundant, prioritize. Oh, yeah, that's good. Be redundant, prioritize, and purpose. Preach, husband. Yep. Thank you, darling. It's positioning yourself in a way where as you are taking this risk, people start to say, hey, man, why did you do that? I saw you online talking about starting your business. Why would you talk like that? I saw you online talking about your first business, the journey of the car wash. Like, why would you talk about that? You see, when I started to learn that people are watching because I'm putting myself out there. People are watching because I'm taking that risk. People are watching because I'm marketing myself. You see, when you take risks, you have to be okay with the failure. And when I started to understand that people who are successful, people who has been in business for 20, 30, 40, 60, however many years they've been in business, or even doing their craft or doing it doesn't have to be in business. We're talking about business because I'm in business. However, it doesn't have to be in business. It have to be in your craft. If you've been doing something for a long period of time, you have like a routine. Nonetheless, that routine can still be changed, updated, and improved. Why? Because when you start your business, the risk that you're taking is communicating the risk. And I'm like, man, these people who at the top, they ain't never failed before. The principals, the entrepreneurs, the people who's really been doing business, or the people that's been succeeding, they ain't never failed before. So then when I go out and start having these podcasts on The Phase Knowledge podcast, and I start to ask them, like, what was your biggest failure? Well, when did you ever fail? Like, what was your biggest challenges? You see, they start to give me stories around their failures that they experienced. And I'm like, wait, hold on. You're telling me that you failed before? You're telling me that you haven't always been successful? You're telling me I got a chance. Hold on. In my mind, I'm recognizing that everyone starts at ground level zero. When you take risks, hold on, let me come back to the board right quick. Hold on. When you take risk, you are marketing yourself. But what are you marketing? You are marketing, hold on, your failures. Somebody say what you want to be known for. I want to be known for my failures. I want to be known for my failures because my failures is what created the knowledge. Hold on, because failure is knowledge. And failure is knowledge because you only take that risk if you okay with failing. There's a book called, what is the book called? Hold on. What's the book called? Grit, Grit. There's a book called Grit. And I had went to the school here in Florida. And when I went to the school, gave a presentation, I was still trying to figure out the business I was in, who I wanted to serve, and the problem that I wanted to solve. And as I started to do the presentation went good. It went good. But prior to the presentation, I got asked the question. It was like, so what do you do? And at the time I was like, well, great question. That's the main question that people ask as you are, I have no idea, as you are getting into business. They ask you what you do. So he asked me, at the time I was like, well, we help, what was it? Here we go. We help leaders build culture through podcasting. And he looked at me and he was like, okay. And then he went to the next question. So when he responded in a way where it wasn't the fact that he definitely didn't understand what I did, because that did not make no sense. Nonetheless, it was the way he reacted. Like it was like his body facial expression was like, bro, what you talking about? What you talking about? And I'm like, maybe I said that wrong. Maybe What is the culture aspect of it? What does that even consist of? What does that even mean? And so I had to go back home and try to pivot and try to understand, like, what am I trying to solve? Like, what do I want to be known for? Building culture through podcasting is really difficult to understand. So I'm like, all right, cool. Let me say we help leaders launch their podcast with confidence. Pretty simple. Helping leaders launch their podcast with confidence. And then it's like, well, it's not the fact that people don't want to launch their podcast with confidence. It's more so that launching your podcast with confidence don't just stop at episode number 1. In fact, 90% of podcasters stop podcasting after episode number 3. Excuse me. And then when you really think about it, well, that's a lot of work. Episode number 3, that's a lot of work. People stop podcasting because of the work that goes into the podcast. So I was like, okay. So then I'm thinking, then I'm reflecting. I'm like, okay, what problem can I actually solve? I started to, like, it came to me. It was like an epiphany. Epiphany is a thought process that come across your mind at random times. And it could be literally random times. If I had I'm gonna say if I had $10 for every time I had an epiphany, oh my goodness, I'd probably just have $200, maybe. I don't know. I'm probably shorting it. I don't know. I digress. But when I started to recognize, I was like, maybe my language is not on key. Maybe the way I'm marketing myself is not simple. Maybe the way I'm communicating is difficult to understand. So then I'm trying to reframe my language. I'm trying to reframe what I'm saying. I'm trying to reframe what I'm marketing and put myself out there as. And one day it just hit me. I was like, wait, hold on. When people have to launch a podcast with confidence, if they're a business owner or if they have a career for a long period of time, they have to learn a new skill. But what if I take that learning away, instead of me just helping you launch a podcast with confidence, which takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. What if I just help you gain the exposure from the work that I've been putting in? And I was like, oh, I figured it out. My wife, every time I get a new thought process, I go to my wife. It used to be, babe, I think I figured it out. Babe, I think I figured it out. Now I figured it out. Why? Because marketing is a form of communication. And as you are communicating, you have to make it simple. So why start your business? You're starting your business because you have to learn how to communicate. I became a better communicator because I started this media business. I became a better communicator because I was consistent with it. I became a better communicator because I'm always talking. Hold on. All right, so let me come back to the board. Okay. So we just went over marketing and communication, why communication is so important. It creates the language. Hold on. What's wrong with the Let me know in the comments if y'all can see what I'm trying to, if y'all can see the board, because I don't think it's showing up right now. I don't know what's going on. Always talking. Oh, Dave, I don't know what just happened. Okay, that's cool. The second point that we're going to talk about. So when you take risks, you're learning how to market yourself, because at some point, things are going to make sense. Things are not going to make sense, but you have to be willing to read the unknown, because when you read the unknown or the unspoken word or unspoken response, you start to see the known. The known is that my communication, my marketing was too difficult. It was too overwhelming. So now when I pay attention to what's not being said and pay attention to the work and the data and the information and so on and so forth, my language starts to change because it becomes more simple. As it's becoming simple, we help leaders gain more exposure, share their story, and attract the right customers. Come on now. Come on, let me know in the comments if that's simple enough. Let me know in the comments if that's simple, if you got that. So the next point I want to hit on, I don't know why my screen ain't working. My board ain't working no more. So the next point I want to hit on is that first you have to take risks, and then when you take risks, you have to adjust. I'm still gonna write it on the board so that way I can remember it. But there you go. You still have to adjust. Adjust. So what are you adjusting? You are adjusting the feedback that you are hello. You are adjusting feedback that you are receiving so that way it can be updated with the information that you're sharing. So hold on. I just looked at the name, Mr. Clayton. I appreciate you. I just saw you was on. Hold on. You just made me remember. When I was in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I was going to the OK program, Mr. Clayton, he's the principal. I don't know if he's still the principal of Mills Middle School. And that was actually in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. He let me come and talk to the class or to the students. And when I went there, first I wore a pink suit. I was like, bro, why did I wear a pink suit? I was figuring it out, okay? And so when I went there and talked to him, I saw like I was learning how to communicate. And that was a way where I didn't even understand. I was learning how to market. I was learning how to communicate in a way people understand me. And so this helped me. That actually helped me a lot. So Mr. Clayton, I appreciate it. If you still here, I appreciate you. I just saw your name. I appreciate it. And that definitely helped me a lot. I just recognized how much that helped me so much. Now I don't wear pink suits no more. I don't even wear suits no more. Well, I wear suits occasionally, but yeah, I digress. When you adjust, that is a great example of adjusting. Okay, when I went to go speak at Mills Middle School in Little Rock, Arkansas, when I went to go speak, I had a pink suit on, but I was going to talk to kids. First off, why would I wear a pink suit? Why would I wear a suit at all? And so I was like, all right, cool. How can I adjust from this? How can I be better? So when I go to different places, different programs, different schools, I try not to wear the suit. I try not to wear the suit because the suit is what makes the disconnect. The suit is what creates the disconnect. Yes, sir. Blessings. Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it for sure. The suit is what, it doesn't make a connection. It creates a disconnect. And so when I go to different places and to speak in different places to present, I started to adjust what I was presenting. Not just about what I was saying, but how I presented. And that taught me, well, if you're going to be in business, you have to be okay with adjusting. Everything is not going to go as planned. And just because it don't go as planned, that doesn't mean you can't adjust your plan. Most importantly is that you have a plan to adjust. Hold on. You have a plan to adjust, because if you're not adjusting your plan, when you start your business, everything is not going to go as planned. I'm thinking when I start my business, everything going to go as planned. And before I start having these conversations with leaders, I'm like, man, I'm thinking I'm the only one that failed. It take me a long time to learn something. But in reality, majority of people who's at the top, they went through some form of failure. They went through some form of setbacks. They went through some form of discovery. Every lesson that you learn, you have a chance to adjust. When you start in your business, you have to be okay with adjusting the plan. The plan is not going to go as planned, but just as long as you have a plan to be adjusted, things will be differently. The reason why that's so important, because when you get into business, you have to be okay with adjusting everything that you're doing. There's been countless amount of time where I have to literally change my communication, my marketing, or what I was doing to help people. I've had to change it so many times. It got to a point where it's overwhelming, because if I change one thing in my business, I got to change everything. I have to change everything. Because now everything has to match. And if I don't adjust to that, the plan is just going to be all over the place because I'm not adjusting accordingly. And so when I started to really understand, like, well, if you're going to be in business, you have to be okay with failure. The lessons that come from the failure are the lessons going to help you gain the knowledge. Why? Because when I first got into business, it was me learning about business. I'm still learning. Like, you never stop being a student. It was me learning the language of business. It was me understanding the business. It was me recognizing what business I'm actually in. I'm adjusting. In reality, I'm developing. When you have a plan to be developed, your plan will be adjusted. When you have a plan to be developed, your plan will be adjusted. And I say that because it's not going to be as smooth as I thought it was going to be, or in fact, as you think it's going to be. But you have to go through the journey of discovering to what you're adjusting to. And so now we help leaders gain more exposure, share their story, and attract the right customers. That was a game changer for me because I'm like, oh, maybe I got it. Maybe I got it. Let's see a week from now if I have to adjust the messaging again. But for now, I think I got it. Failure is knowledge because you have to be okay with failure. So the first thing that we went over was to take risks. If you are, why is it jumping? Hold on. It's jumping. Hold on. It's jumping. Dang. Has it been doing this whole time? I hope not. Has it been doing this whole time? Hopefully it's not lagging no more. But anywho, so first thing that we went over was taking risks. When you take risks, you are learning how to market yourself. When you take risks, you are learning from your failures. When you take risks, you are discovering the business that you like to be in. The second point that we went over was to adjust. You have to adjust your plan. The plan that you have is great. Just know that you're going to have to make changes to it. You're going to have to change for yourself. You're going to have to improve the business that you're doing. And last thing we want to talk about is that you have to be patient. Oh my. Not lagging. Okay. Thank you. You have to be patient. 3, have to be patient. And you have to be patient because you're not going to be successful as soon as you start. I literally remember I had the first book that I've ever read was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And when I read this book, well, from like cover to cover, like I've read some books in school, not a lot. However, the first actual book that I read from cover to cover was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And in this book, it talked about how he was raised by a dad, or he had his biological dad in his life, like his actual father in his life. Then he had his friend dad who had wealth, or who created wealth. His dad he referenced poor, but his dad was like, what was he? Was he an educator? I think he was an educator. Was he an educator? I can't remember exactly what he was, but he was something. And it wasn't wealth and poor. It was more so how they thought. And the wealthy dad thought differently than the poor dad. The poor dad thought differently than the wealthy dad. And referencing poor, not saying poor in a bad way, but poor of how you think. And so in the book, when I read this, it gave me a different perspective. I'm like, ooh, this is interesting. Ooh, this is great. Ooh, what is investing? What is real estate? What is all these terminologies that he's talking about? And so after I finished reading the book, I got interested. I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to start real estate. I'm going to get in real estate wholesaling. I'm going to try to figure this thing out. And when I started to get into real estate wholesaling, I started calling homeowners. I started reaching out and so on and so forth. Excuse me. But before I did that, it was August of 2020. After I finished reading this book, it was talking about having passive income and all these different things. I didn't even know what passive income even was before then. As I'm reading the book, hold on. As I'm reading the book, I get inspired. I'm like, all right, cool. It's August of 2020. I said by September of 2020, I'm going to be a millionaire. And I didn't recognize that just because you say you're going to be something don't mean you're going to become that something. September of 2020 came, and I'm nowhere near that. Nowhere near. But what I recognized is that one, it's okay to dream big. Okay. There's a book called The Art of the Deal, and it says, if you're going to dream, why not dream big? Okay. When I came to the realization that I wasn't going to make $1 million in a month, I'm like, maybe my thinking was off. Maybe like I'm not doing maybe I thought too big, or maybe if this book gave me so much inspiration, I'm like, man, I can do it. But I didn't know anything on how to do it. I didn't know that you needed skills to have, you needed education to develop, you needed some belief to instill in yourself to say, even though you believe you can make $1 million in a month, you're not. Because you don't have the skills, you don't have the education, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the expertise, you don't have the people around you, you don't have nothing. Well, I didn't have nothing at the time. And when I discovered, I was like, well, when September 2020 came, I wasn't a millionaire. I was like, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I didn't read the book correctly, or maybe I skipped some words, or maybe I skimmed it. But here's the thing. The lessons that I learned from that book still applies today. It's how you see the risk that you're taking. So that way, as you're taking that risk, you learn to be patient. The reason why you have to be patient is the last point, is because it's not going to come overnight. I'm thinking in 30 days, I'm going to be a millionaire. But I was nowhere near that. I didn't even make a dime. I was in real estate wholesaling for 18 to 24 months. And we only closed one deal. And I say we because it was me and my buddy back in Little Rock, Arkansas. Shout out to Dylan. And to be honest, he did all the work because I'm in Cali. I'm like, man, no, I'm not gonna say that. I called, I follow up, and then he went there to go look at the homes and things of that nature. What I didn't recognize was that patience was the key. Education is the key in addition to that. And it taught me, just because you have an ideal of something that you're going to become, well, you have to become that something before you receive it. And it took me a long time to learn stuff. When I played high school football, it took me a long time to learn my position. It took me a long time. Till this day, I remember my high school football coach was like, Hump, my last name is Humphrey. He say, Hump, he say, you a high rep guy. And I was like, no, I ain't. No, I ain't. He said, yes, you are. He said, I just told you are. And I'm like, what does that even mean? He was like, it take you a long time to understand something. And that one piece of advice gave me the confidence to take the time to learn the something that I'm learning, or the something that I'm developing, or the something that I'm trying to understand. The time that it takes is the time that you put into yourself to understand what you are learning. Being patient to understand your business that you're in, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of moving parts of the journey, and there's so many different things that your business has to have for it to be profitable, for it to be successful, for it to build a team. And before you get the team, you have to start with yourself. I was on a podcast. It was called Lead with Ralph. Shout out to Ralph. And he focused on the leadership aspect of it. And I was like, well, the leadership aspect is good. Like, that's really good. It's really phenomenal. And he asked me a question. He was like, well, what does leadership mean to you? And I proceeded to say, well, when I was in this class a while ago, I think it was something, principles of leadership or something like that. I'm in this class, and my professor proceeds to say, if you are a leader and you don't have people leading you, then you are not a leader. And when he said that, I was like, that is a great saying. That is a powerful saying. You have to have people to lead in order for you to be considered a leader. And then when I answered the question, I was like, I have a different perspective. If you don't learn how to lead yourself, how can you lead the next person? If you don't know how to lead yourself, how can you understand what the next person is going through? And so when I started to understand, well, it starts with you, but just because it starts with you, you have to be patient enough to understand the information that you are receiving. When I started to understand the information and apply it and learn it and discover it, I'm still growing and developing. Like, I don't have everything figured out. In fact, I'm still on my fifth attempt of trying to go a media business, and it's taking me so long to learn where I'm at today. Nonetheless, I'm taking the time because I have developed the patience. Many times, it's the instant gratification, it's the instant success that makes people quit. You cannot have instant success if you haven't put the time in. Come on. I saw this video with LaRussell. He was like, come on. Whenever he say something that makes sense, he was like, come on. In the comments, if it makes sense, be like, come on. You can't be willing to have the success that you're looking to have for your business if you're not patient. The media business I'm growing, that I'm developing, that I'm building, it takes a lot of work. But I'm patient enough for that work to make sense. It take me a long time to make sense, but when it makes sense, it clicks, it connects. And this helps me because I don't have to be so hard on myself. I don't have to say, man, why am I not getting success like everybody else? Everybody else has a successful business, but I'm looking at everybody else and not the amount of work that I've developed within myself. So over the years, I started to understand, well, when you have patience, you have to be okay with showing up every single day. When you have patience, you have to be willing to show up and learn the information every single day. When you have patience, you have to be willing to adjust. Why start your business? Because you learn more about yourself. You learn how to be patient, and you learn how to fail. Because when you get back up, you're getting back up with the knowledge, because that failure becomes knowledge. Failure is knowledge because you have to try to take that risk. So you can fail, so you can be embarrassed, so you can learn how to do better. And then once you do better, you become better. And when you become better, you gain the knowledge for your success. As you are being patient, just know it will start to make sense, but you have to be patient. I did a podcast the other day, and it was around don't compare yourself to other people because you don't know the journey that they went on. And I started to do it subconsciously, like I wasn't aware that I was doing it. And even though I was doing it, I had to catch myself and say, you've been doing good. You've been doing well. There's a quote that says, well done, good and faithful servant. I think it's Matthew, I forgot the scripture, but anywho, it talks about how well done, being a servant, a well done, good and faithful servant. Excuse me. I got to find that chapter again because now I want to read it. I digress. In closing, let's see if I'm able to pull this up. In closing, okay, why start your business? There are 3 reasons why starting your business is so beneficial. First, number 1 is that you learn to take risk. Risk is so important. You have to be okay with the risk that you're taking because failure is going to happen. Like you can't prevent failure. Oh, I'm so afraid to start because I want to be perfect. Well, what are you trying to be perfect for? Like you don't even know what you're doing. And when you take the risk, you have to be okay with adjusting. Everyone has a plan. Mike Tyson said everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, here's the news flash. Like I have an implant in my mouth and I was missing a tooth for a long time. I got hit when I was playing football. Well, I got punched in the mouth. But for some reason, I keep getting back up. Because I want to learn how to be better. So you have to be willing to adjust. And as you are adjusting, lastly, you have to be patient. You have to be patient. Nothing's going to come to you overnight. On the contrary, it can come to you over time. And when you put the time into yourself, you're developing the business that you would like to have. So why get into business is that you learn to take risks. You learn how to adjust. And most importantly, you learn how to be patient for your journey. So if you're a leader that's struggling with exposure and want to gain more exposure for your business, shoot me a message, shoot me an email. We'd love to help leaders like you gain more exposure, share your story, and attract the right customers. Until next time, hit that follow button. Let me know in the comments your biggest takeaway on why you should start your business. Yeah, or the biggest takeaway or why starting a business is either good and or bad. Let me know in the comments. I love to read it. Until next time, because my phone is about to die and I'm about to hop off. Click the videos to watch more videos on how to grow your business with confidence. Or how to gain more exposure for your business with confidence. There we go. That's the business.